complex pattern is creating a lot of problems in terms of severe weather, which includes tornadoes, destructive winds, and very large hail. Even flooding is a possibility for much of the southern tier of the United States. The pattern will kind of change, but create a new set of problems. We're going to take a look at all of that here in just a minute. We've got to look at the tropics. We'll also take a look at the long range, including the weekend forecast, so you know how to plan for your weekend. We're at the end of another work week, and we've got a lot of severe weather to talk about. We've seen severe weather reports yesterday to the tune of about 200 different reports, including wind, tornadoes. We're going to see much more of that today and over the coming days as this multi-day severe weather threat continues to unfold. So we're going to look at all of that. We'll even wrap it up with solar and geological updates too. So I've got all of that here this morning. I've got to get out of here pretty quickly in a little bit. So we're going to do this quickly, folks. But we've got a pretty complex surface system setting up, or a surface situation out here. We've got several little waves of energy moving across the flow. We've got a boundary that extends all the way up into New England, back into the Ohio Valley, into the southern and central plains. And we've got another little system up here in Canada, but much of what we're seeing is the result of boundaries from various thunderstorm complexes, sort of a quasi-dry line, a stationary front that's kind of mingled through here, and then little pieces of energy moving along in the flow. So we've got lots of instability, energy to get things going, boundaries to serve as a focus, and all of that is coming together to create severe weather hazard for much of the central plains into the Tennessee Valley, lower Ohio Valley, and upper southeast. General shower and thunderstorm activity can be found for much of the central plains, back into the desert southwest, up into the Great Lakes, and over into Florida and the western parts of the southeast, up through New England, where a severe weather and flooding risk exists this afternoon as well. So what is the Storm Prediction Center showing us today? Well, we've got a little slight risk area up here in Massachusetts, marginal risk for isolated severe weather, wind, and hail possible in some of the areas from New England all the way into the western southeast, upper southeast, through the Ohio Valley. But really, we start to pick up the severe weather portion of the threat here back into Tennessee, Kentucky, the upper portions of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, most of Arkansas, the southern half or southern third of Missouri, back into Kansas, into Colorado, just east of Denver, includes Pueblo, down into southern Texas, just southwestern Texas, just a little bit east of El Paso. But we've got an enhanced threat again in Colorado and also down into the lower panhandle of Texas, where we could see strong tornadoes with damaging winds and supercell thunderstorms. So that's what we've got on tap for today, folks. A wide area of severe weather, 5% tornado risk from Colorado down to the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas. Wind threat is the kind of the biggest aerial threat over the central, south central plains into the Tennessee Valley. Hail could be a big story again back into the panhandles from Colorado to southwest Texas. And we see a hatched area, which includes, which would mean baseball to softball size hail in some of these areas. 30% risk, where we're going to see supercells as the primary severe weather mode. We're going to be seeing lots of different severe weather modes, general showers and thunderstorms, supercells rotating and potentially creating tornadoes. And we're going to see those form into clusters and line segments, and eventually cell line segments as they sort of move through the area. And we'll see this happen in a repeated fashion over the next couple of days. So we've got lots of severe weather to get through, folks. We'll probably see some strong tornadoes this afternoon. Looking at the Cape, the thunderstorm fuel, look at this. So big area of reds and yellows. That's where we start to see the really moderate to strong Cape in through Texas, all the way into Arkansas and portions of the western mid-south. And if we go on out in time through the afternoon hours, early afternoon into late afternoon and evening, you see that Cape building from the panhandle of Texas through Oklahoma, Arkansas. And that's where we're going to see the strongest updrafts and potential organization as we get a little bit of wind energy aloft moving through. The low-level jet's going to crank up at night, and we've seen this over the last couple of days, where we get these clusters of thunderstorms moving through, providing severe weather threats into the overnight hours. We're going to see that continue over the next couple of days. Those are called mesoscale convective systems, and we're going to see a lot of those MCSs. Potentially, some of those could organize to the point where they could travel a long way and create a swath of destructive winds higher than 70 miles per hour. So that's what we're going to keep our eyes on over the next couple of days. But that cape just continues to build through the evening. It doesn't go away. You see how it stays overnight here in Oklahoma and Arkansas. It starts to diminish a little bit, but then gets renewed as we get on into the early morning hours tomorrow. And then it just continues in those same areas. And again, those same areas are going to be under the gun tomorrow. And as we get on into Sunday, things change a little bit, where we see most of the opportunity on Sunday for severe weather back here in Texas, where we see strong instability, and then again into the eastern Carolinas. That's where we're going to see the best upper level support combined with the best instability. This afternoon, we've got potential for tornadoes. And look at this. If I roll this into motion, you see these little swaths showing up here. These are updraft helicity. So this is where we would see rotating thunderstorms, potentially strong rotation as the colors are brighter. And you can see that back into Colorado, down Colorado and Texas. The model is not going to be exact in terms of accuracy with the placement of these, but no, in these areas here is where I would pay attention to. So, anywhere from Pueblo, Colorado, down into Santa Fe, into the panhandle of Texas, including Amarillo and maybe Lubbock and Midland, places like that in the eastern Kansas into the Oklahoma, or the western Kansas into the Oklahoma panhandle. Pay attention for rotation, potentially some stronger storms. Eventually, all of this will merge into segments and clusters as we get through the evening and send a MCS through Oklahoma and farther east as we go through time. So you can see over the late evening, early evening, into the overnight hours, we see plenty of rotation with some of these storms, and that'll hang on as we get on toward midnight. So watch out, folks. If we look at the future radar, we're looking at this morning, we see a cluster of showers and thunderstorms already working through Missouri and Arkansas. We find flash flood watches up for Oklahoma and Missouri and places like that, where we see repeated segments of thunderstorms with torrential downpours. And so as we move this along through the afternoon and evening, look at this, that little cluster of showers and thunderstorms will kind of die out this morning. It already is, and it will renew itself as we get on into the evening and start to build through Tennessee and Kentucky and places like that. You can start to see these little clusters already breaking out. And look what happens as we get on in toward 2, 3, 4 o'clock. We start to see supercells develop down here in southwest Texas, all the way up through the Panhandle and Colorado as well. And those supercells will be translating east in time. And again, particularly as we get on in toward the evening hours, that night jet will kind of pick up, provide some low-level wind shear, and help to organize some of these thunderstorms into line segments. And eventually a system will form in Oklahoma and begin to get more organized. You see how that happens here as we get on in through the overnight hours. That'll persist, move east into Arkansas and down into Alabama and Mississippi and lower Tennessee. And we'll see those storms kind of organize, move through the morning hours. And tomorrow afternoon, it'll reinvigorate as we go through time. And so that's sort of the expectation. A couple of more storms back in Texas, but we could see a little bit of a break as we get into tomorrow before a renewed threat back in toward the weekend. And so that's what we're looking at. Tomorrow, folks, another low pressure moving in toward the Canadian border will bring unsettled conditions up there as well. Flow pattern at 500 millibars. You see these little bright colors and these little kinks in the flow like this. Here's one. It's sort of the same short wave. Now I got another upper low moving in out here, another low coming in up here. Those are indicative of lift and cooling in the atmosphere that helps to create instability, lift for showers and thunderstorms, where these bright colors exist too. As we put this out into motion, you can see this is Saturday morning. Those little bright colors kind of move along. So we're going to see some lift working through the south, the mid-south tomorrow, and maybe a little bit of a break back here in Texas. But then look, we've got another system moving into the northern plains that's going to cool us off up there, bring in some unsettled weather. We'll see that little system translate over as we get on into Sunday evening. So could see some showers and thunderstorms in a severe fashion over here in the eastern coastal plain of the Carolinas and down into Georgia. Another little system begins to move through Texas Sunday afternoon. Could spark off showers and thunderstorms there, creating some severe weather again. Another system moving in. We've got a split flow, northern branch and the southern branch. Southern branch continues to bring these impulses in to the southern tier that creates showers and thunderstorms, and we're going to see that pattern kind of repeat as we go on out in time. Looking at the threat for tomorrow, big area. So West Texas, you finally get a little bit of a break. Could see some isolated severe out here, but big swath of slight risk. Probably you're going to see some enhanced risk at some point once the mesoscale features get better defined. That happens overnight. Those little clusters, those MCSs move through, they lay out boundaries, and where we start to see those boundaries lay out defines a better severe threat as we go on through the day. So I would expect as we get into tomorrow to maybe see a enhanced risk somewhere. Tornadoes are possible for sure over Arkansas, lower Missouri, into lower Illinois, Indiana, parts of Tennessee, upper southeast here in Dixie Alley could see some tornadoes. Wind is the primary threat through the severe weather area. Hail is going to be more prominent back here in toward Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, spreading into the western southeast. That's the way it looks right now. And as we get on out into Sunday, back to the future we are, folks. Enhanced risk back out here in the panhandle of Texas, upper Texas, and then most of Oklahoma under a slight risk out into Missouri and Arkansas, coastal plain of Piedmont and Piedmont sections of North Carolina, South Carolina into Georgia. Big marginal risk around that. Could see more elevated risk of severe weather than marginal, but we'll have to wait till we get closer to Sunday to see how those boundaries set out and what kind of instability we have to work with. But isolated severe across much of the southern and central portion of the country, and in general shower and thunderstorm activity up into the lakes and back out in toward California. Now, as we take a look at how the radar kind of shakes out over the next few days, Friday afternoon, we're looking at showers and thunderstorms. We've already kind of seen this play out, but little clusters will move through Oklahoma. You guys will start to see an MCS develop out there. And that will move through as we get on into Saturday morning. You see that firing up here in Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri, and another one dying out over the Appalachians, southern Appalachians here. But as we get on out in time, you can see one after another, just a parade of these MCSs just sort of move through, bringing the threat of wind. Sunday evening, we're looking at showers and thunderstorms through the Tennessee Valley. Dying out as we get into the overnight hours and just leaving us with just some general shower activity by Sunday morning. But it could be a wet go as we get on in here into the Appalachians, Western Apps, all the way up into the Ohio Valley, into the upper southeast. Few showers and thunderstorms. Then Sunday afternoon, our threat is renewed, and we have these little line segments and clusters again, and we start to see more shower and thunderstorm activity back out here in Texas, and a big organized convective event going on out here. A few of these thunderstorms left over as we get into the overnight hours. That'll kind of die out over the southeast. But that's what we've got. The big low pressure moving in, another trough moving into the Great Lakes, northern tier of the country, bringing shower and thunderstorms with it. A cold front will exist around that, so another boundary to work with. And that's what we've got, folks. So we go on into Monday and Tuesday, just more in the way of segments of showers and thunderstorms. So the severe weather threat, unfortunately, is not going anywhere. Our active pattern's not going anywhere, at least for the next 5 days, 6 days, something like that. In the meantime, down in the tropics, the GFS is continuing to show a tropical development. One of these days, it's going to be right. If it shows a 240 to 384 hour tropical system in the Gulf all summer long, it's going to hit the jackpot here one of these times, folks. But it is not today, and we're not looking at any other tropical activity in the Gulf. So if you see it on social media, don't give it any attention at all. Look at this. European completely clean. The ensembles are clean as well. The Tropical Prediction Center, I keep calling it that because it's old school, but it's the National Hurricane Center, completely blank over the next 7 days here in the Atlantic. Not much to look at there. Eastern Pacific, a couple of areas of disturbed weather where a tropical depression will probably form in the next 24 to 48 hours or so, probably in the next maybe 5 days at least. You'll see some development here, but moving west-northwest away from land, so not expected to be a big deal there. Flood watches are up in the meantime from lower Kansas, upper Oklahoma into the southern Missouri, and we're going to see rain. Several inches of rain could fall in these areas as repeated rounds of storms move through. Tons of air quality alerts along. It's very spotty along the northern tier here from Maine all the way into Minnesota, Nebraska. We're seeing air quality alerts, and all of these areas are under alerts because of the wildfire smoke coming out of Canada, and hopefully that'll abate at some point in time. But that's what's going on in the alerts area. Big area of heavy rain, as I said, stretching back from Oklahoma to West Texas, all the way through the south until you get to the Appalachian Mountains, and it sort of breaks up apart on the other side of the mountains there. We're not seeing quite as much rain, but New England could see a couple of inches. This, places like Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts could see a couple of inches of rain today, but as much as 4, 5, 6 inches of rain could fall in spots out here in the lower plains just west of the Mississippi Valley. So take flood warning warning seriously. If you hear those, pay attention. Don't drive across flooded roadways and all that good stuff. So kind of putting that all together here with our temperature map. Warm in the western states along the southern tier, 80s and 90s up until you get to southern New England, and then we get back into the 70s in New England, northern parts of New England up to the northeast, Great Lakes, central nation's midsection up to the northern plains. We're seeing 70s this afternoon for highs. Tomorrow, much the same story with a little bit of a more of a pronounced rebound out west, Washington, Spokane, Oregon, places like that, and back into as we get down in here to southern Nevada and the desert Southwest. We start to see hundreds, and also in West Texas too. So warming up, upper 80s across much of the southeast into the 90s, down here in Florida too. Cooler up in Maine. We're going to see 60s and 70s up there, but 70s abound for much of the northern tier with a few 80s mixed in for good measure. And that same pattern persists as we get on into Sunday. 70s across the north until we get up here into the northern tier, Dakota, into the Dakotas, particularly North Dakota, northern Minnesota, with that new system coming in. It's going to bring much cooler weather, cloud cover, unsettled conditions up here as we get on into Sunday. So look for temperatures to cool off. 90s, upper 90s in Seattle, all the way to the Canadian border. Hundreds in the desert Southwest along the border counties. Much of Texas starting to heat up and get into the hundreds. 80s and 90s across the southern tier. And that is your temperature forecast. And kind of looking out as we go on out in time a little bit. This is 12Z Sunday. Let's skip this on ahead to Monday since we've already looked at that. So Monday morning, big trough, upper low coming in, really warm conditions under a ridge out here on the west, warmth hanging on along the east, but we see this big bold shaped trough work in over the Great Lakes over the next several days as we get on out into next week, Wednesday into Wednesday evening. It'll start to lift out, replaced by ridging, at least in the northern branch, but the southern branch is still active, and we see these little kinks. It means more energy is coming in, so we're likely to continue to see severe weather threats across the south, particularly back into Texas as we get toward mid next week. Temperature anomalies Monday afternoon, very cool in the nation's midsection across the northern tier, several degrees below normal, much above in the northwest, the Pacific Northwest, and essentially along the entire western, maybe fifth or fourth of the country here, where we see temperatures run 10 degrees above normal or higher. We already saw those 80s and 90s approaching 100 up here in Washington and Oregon. We saw that on the temperature map, and you'll see warmth across the southern tier along the east coast as we get on into Tuesday and Wednesday. Warmth pushes in across the west. That trough will cool us down in the southern and central portion of the country and eventually working east and kind of dying out as it does so. So we'll look for average to below across the eastern sections down in toward Texas. We'll start to see some cooling down there. So maybe that puts a little bit of a lid on the severe weather, at least the intensity of it as we get on out into late next week. But again, another system's pushing in. So my expectation is that cold won't or that chilly weather won't last too long, but we already start to see warmer temperatures building in across the northern tier. Looking at the solar threat today, folks, not much going on. The sun's quiet, so zero conditions, no geomagnetic conditions. Looking at our K index down here, greens across the board. We had a little bit of yellow there, but nothing to worry about. Everything's kind of settling down. The sun's quiet. Sunspots turning in. They're kind of complex, so we're going to watch those few filaments looking to turn in toward us too. So we'll see if there's any eruptions over the next few days. Not much in the way of aurora viewing either. Volcanic activity, really nothing else new to show there. And earthquakes, not all that much interesting. We had around a 5 in Nevada. I wonder if anybody felt that. That's a little bit unusual out there. And we had a 3.8 out in Hawaii, but other than that, no big quakes along any of the fault lines around the world. So kind of quiet there for the most part as well. And folks, that's the update for today. I've got my son with me this weekend. We'll do a couple of shorts, so look out for those. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I certainly appreciate all the new subscribers. And we'll do a regular cold rains weather where we'll be back in a good cadence for that next week. But in the meantime, like the video, make a comment if you have anything for me to pray over. Put that in there. I pray for you all every day. Pray for me and let me know if there's anything that you have questions about or I can help out with. And anyway, I hope you're having a great Friday, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.